Alright, so the next thing we got going on in this video is the subframe. So I got a Ford 88 here from a 07 Explorer. So it's the good kind with the front dual mount, and then the rear has got like those ears on it. And then we've got a subframe here, which is actually an E46 M3 subframe. So the idea was the rear of it already has dual mounts, so it'll be easier to weld in my own plate there. The front has a single mount, so that's obviously needs to get changed, but just looking at it, I'm gonna need to trim this. But this subframe I got pretty cheap, so I gotta clean up all this rust and see like if it's even usable. I mean, it looks usable, it's just like surface rust. And then after that, I borrowed this M3 diff, and basically I'll just set up, like I'll bolt this into the subframe, and then I'll be able to get the center points of the axles and stuff like that, and then I can take it out, and then that's how I make the mounting tabs for the 88 once I get it in there. So I'm gonna start grinding this and it'll be clean then. Alright, so we got a quick fixture here to hold the diff so it's not actually on the table. Just a simple 4-post going up. I'm gonna eventually put some bolts down there to keep it centered, but for now I can just put some dowels in there and it'll keep it centered for what I need to do. But what this will allow me to do is now I can take basically these pieces here and bring another piece up to kind of locate the center of the axle, and then the same thing with the pinion. That way the front part of the diff, that way side to side is right, and then also up and down and everything. So everything should be directly bolted into the car then. So I'll make some little fixtures to come up here, and then I can take the diff out, put the 88 roughly in this area. I'm gonna have to cut first this area out, that way it can fit, and then once all the axles line up to all the markings I'm making right now, then that's when I can start making the plates and weld it back together. Alright, so what we got here, I got all the center marks and a height. So this is centered on the input flange, and then I have a height from the table up to the center of this bolt right here, so 7.5 inches to there. And then same thing on the side, so the axles here, if you can imagine straight up line from this edge. Probably be better to show you without that, but basically this side of this dowel rod is the center point going left to right on the axle, and then that is also 7.5 inches coincidentally off the table. Same thing for the other side. So basically I have input flange, both axles measured, and that's where they're going to be put. The diff obviously needs to be centered side to side in here, so I'll probably put another center line mark back here, just off these casting marks here, just to have another alignment point. So yeah, and then I gotta take this one out and cut the front here to fit the 88 in it, so I'm gonna be doing that next. There's an interesting comparison here. So this is the non-M diff that I've currently been running in the car for the last, I don't know, 2 years since I put the Coyote in it. I only broke one, so I had good luck so far. This is the M3 diff that I was borrowing, and then this is the 88 that I'm going to be putting in it. It needs cleaned off. But interesting here is the distance from the center of this axle to that flange on the non-M diff is within like a 1/4 inch, or maybe even identical to the 88. So that means my drive shaft length is probably okay, which I wasn't sure if I'd have to change it or not. The only thing it looks like I'll have to do is probably just change the flange for the adapter, because this is a different flange style. So and then also the M3 and the non-M diff, even though the non-M is the smallest, these are way heavier than this diff. Like I should have weighed them, but I'm sure there's weights out there on the internet somewhere. But alright, so the diff, I basically made some mounts here that go off and locate some of these bolts. So this basically places the diff exactly where I want it. Center line on these pieces I made before, 7.5 inches up. just like I needed from the stock BMW. Same thing on this side. The front is also in center, and the angle I have to adjust once I get the subframe in there, but basically it's pretty much located, and then I can just place the subframe on top of it and see where I need to either clearance something or adjust it. So let's set this down. So basically it sets on like that, and then that way I can build some mounts off the actual frame here. I have to probably cut these sway bar brackets. Alright, so I skipped ahead a little bit. The car got wrapped. I had an event at Final Bout. I was rushing to get everything done, so I didn't really have time to video. But I'm just going to show you real quick what I ended up doing. So I bought these arms right here that are basically adjustable uppers. I forget the brand, I think it's like PMC or something. So they're adjustable uppers, which I welded a spring mount on to mount the stock shock, so that way, or the spring, so I could keep it divorce set up. It worked, but there's not really that much adjustability when it's even in there anyways. These are kind of hard to get to, and you can't really move it too much without the spring. I mean, you know, you could move it probably about a 1/4 inch or so before the spring starts getting a little wonky. But the main issue I had was actually this part right here contacted the body up there. I don't know, there's like a little piece coming off here, but basically contacted the body just in full like compression, and this is actually bent a little bit right here. I don't know if you can tell from like here to here, it's slightly bent. So driver's side was sitting about, I don't know, 3/4 inch lower than the passenger side. Passenger side was not bent. So here's the arm in there right now. It's hard to tell, but it's not bent. So the options were either to rebuild that or just go another route. So I ordered E46 uppers, which are steel. I'm still gonna have to clearance them right here, and then I also have, like, I don't know what the designation is, but they're X3 uppers, which are supposed to be pretty much the same thing as well, except they're a little bit more clearance on the bottom. So I have those coming. I'm still gonna make these work just so I have a spare set. But so that's the update. But the whole reason why I had to do that is because these CVs are gigantic compared to the factory ones. So if you imagine this in there, if your car is like a monster truck, you probably don't have to worry about it because your arm's going to be kind of like this. But as you lower it, this is going to be, well, actually if it was lifted it would be more like that. But as you lower it, this starts to go down, and that's exactly where the CV area is. I don't know if you can see that notch, but basically this was clearance to not hit during full compression. And then for the actual diff itself, had an issue with that as well. So I originally cracked the ears on the first one up here by putting in the aluminum mounts. So if you look over here, this one's cracked right here. Hard to, a little easier to see here. So basically it cracked all the way around up to the front here. No good. So the issue with that was my mistake. When I was pressing in these aluminum bushings, I used the hammer, and you're not supposed to do that. So it makes sense, that was my fault. I'm gonna put these in this diff eventually, but for right now I just want to get it back together just so I can test these arms and everything. These aren't going to remove too much. The bushings are relatively stiff in here, and it's just that front end. The back half is solid mounted. So here's the subframe mount, or the subframe in. You can see that a little better. I had to do a little bit of clearancing up here, not too much. Basically the jig I built, you know, like I said earlier, got everything in position and it worked out pretty well. I had to change out the flange on the diff, so that's just an easy change. Just gotta press out the yoke, or the U-joint, and put in a new flange. So did that. The original drive shaft length worked because this had some flex in it, in and out. What else going on down here? Again, I have the adjustable lowers. The uppers were adjustable. I'm gonna swap those with E46 and then have to clearance them. So I'm gonna start putting this back in, and I gotta put oil in this yet. So I'm gonna put it back in, and then we'll look at how much I actually have to clearance it for the axles in case anyone else has to do this on their car. Alright, so I got the E46 arm in. The axle's just kind of chilling here right now. But just to show you what I'm talking about with clearance, if you look up there, the bolt or the actual CV will contact the upper control arm. Right there. So, and I'm not even really, I'm basically at almost full droop right now, or I am at full droop. So as you lift this up, it's going to just interfere more and more and more. So what I need to do is basically just clearance that in that area, pretty much where that tape's at. But I'm going to do a little extra down to the right side of that CV, just to make sure I don't have any issues, because this will rock a little tiny bit side to side, and it's really not going to be a ton, but I'm just going to clearance everything as much as I can. That way it'll all go together and not have any issues. Here's another quick recap. So I got the upper control arm in. This is at full squat basically. So there's like a 1/4 inch before it hits the actual body. The spring would really have to compress to get down that far. I think the spring might bind before, so I gotta get the height of that and see if I need to adjust my shock any different. But basically the shock's bottomed out, so that's how you want to set them. Don't know if it has a video on this, I'm sure everyone's seen it. But basically what you want to do is set your shock so at full compression nothing is touching. That goes the same for, like, say if your tire was going to hit the wheel well or something, you'd want to set it so it's before that. So what that gets me now though is a ton of droop. So I don't know if I mean I guess I'll get it if I have it, but I just want to make sure that when I put the spring in here, that it's not going to fall out. And if so, I'm going to have to raise that up again, which would require me to clearance this on the top now, or a little on the body here. But I don't really want to do that, so we'll see. All right, so what I ended up doing is getting X3 BMW SUV on upper arms. So I don't know if you can see here, they have a little bit different type of construction compared to E46 and E36 arms. Got like a little channel design, kind of the same thing with the spring bucket. I had to clearance them, as you can tell right there, for whenever the suspension's moving up and down. The big CVs on these axles will contact them, so I had to do a little clearancing. Not too much of a big deal, but again, it's just if you have these axles, they're going to have a pretty big CV on both ends. Obviously strong, but makes fitment a little bit harder if you want to run your car a little bit low. If you had like a, I don't know, normal ride height or like a stock ride height, they probably would not require much clearancing. But they ended up, you know, this is going to work for me. And with the diff, it's all up in here. We've got same drive shaft flange, or a different drive shaft flange. I have the same drive shaft though. The seam's legit garage mounts for the diff, and then I have this was just a modified subframe. So we're gonna put it back together here. Here's the other side. The axle's not in yet, but you can kind of see the arm itself. I used E36 arms as well, but the problem they had was there was, like, in between the arm and the body here, it was probably about, I don't know, 1.5 inches less travel that I could actually have when the car was down. So moving to these arms will give me more suspension travel and allow me to be low at the same time. So that'll work out.